Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Shipra Sandberg and I'm so honored to be hosting this meaningful Rosh Chodesh of Rabanit, as well as being inspired by the different chizuk of Rabanit, Cohen in Suffolk, New York. I decided to do this with Nishmas, my father, Shalom who exemplified Odei Shalom, Grodei Shalom, as well as my brother, who passed away a little bit over a year ago, Yisrael Meir ben Shalom, whose name was Yisrael Meir like the Chafetz Chaim. Although he was not named after the Chafetz Chaim, he actually passed away on the Chafetz Chaim's birthday, and he was very careful with Shemiras Halashon. In addition, Leil Nishmas, my father-in-law Shlomo ben Avram Yudah, who was an extremely sensitive individual, and last is Leili Nishmas, my friend's son, who recently passed away, young boy, 14 years old, Yosef Shmuel ben Tzvi Elnach, who had such a love for Hashem. We are part of the Women of Klal Yisrael, and this event should be a tremendous inspiration. It causes in Shemayim to bring the Gula Shalem on Yetz Hashem. Without further ado, I'd like to present Rabanit Cohen.
Chodesh Tov Mevorach. It's so beautiful to have you come out on this glorious day. And we say glorious because we know that when the rain falls, things grow. There are things in the elements in the universe that are being produced and flourishing. So Baruch Hashem, it's Gishmei Bracha. And we have to soak it all in, as we say. So first and foremost, I want to thank the hostess with the mostest, the woman who brought me out here all the way from Brooklyn, New York. Genesia Shifra Bat Masha, Kadosh Baruch Hu yimala et kol mishalot libech letova ulebracha. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give you nachat ruach from your children and grandchildren, Be'ezrat Hashem. You should see simcha, bracha, yeshuot v'nechamot, starting already from this month. You should see the Geula Shlema. And also, as Shifra mentioned, this shiur is going to be Leilu Nishmat Shalom ben Avram Yitzchak Alav Shalom, Leilu Nishmat Reb Shlomo ben Avraham Yehuda Alav Shalom, Leilu Nishmat Reb Yisrael Meir ben Reb Shalom Alav Shalom, and the unfortunate passing of that young boy, Leilu Nishmat Yosef Shmuel ben Tzvi Elimelech. These are the things that we have to cry about during this tragic half month of Av, the first 9 days of month. After the 9 days, we have to rejoice. But these 9 days, we have to introspect. And so I want to begin with the singing of the Hallel. Yivarech Yerei Adonai Haktanim im Hagedolim Yosef Adonai Alechem Alechem v'yabenem Ze hayom oivas Adonai Nahagilo v'nismecha moy Ze hayom oivas Adonai Nahagilo v'nismecha moy. That was such a beautiful, beautiful davening. Hashem yimalet kol mishalot libchem letova levracha. We should see only yeshuot v'nechamot this month, Be'ezrat Hashem, and the era of the Mashiach already that we're waiting for. Bekarov, already this month we want it to happen. Just wanted to make a couple of announcements before we begin the shiur. First of all, a grand announcement for everybody here and for all the viewers out there at Torah Anytime and anyone who comes to the shiurim. Ohel Sarah, Be'ezrat Hashem, is going to be launching probably right after the Chagim, which means right after Sukkot, our amazing new site, which we're working on now, which is going to have everything imaginable that a lady could think of, from tefillot to parsha, to questions and answers on whether it's chinuch hayeladim, shalom bayit, everything kitchen related, whatever you think a woman, a Jewish woman, would want to know is going to be on this site. So we've been working on it for quite some time, and we're still developing it. Be'ezrat Hashem, after the Chagim, we're going to launch the basic site, and as the weeks and months unfold, we're going to be continuing to add things to your benefit. Whoever wants to help us, give us ideas, what you'd like to see on the site, or help sponsor the site, we're always welcome to newcomers and people that want to help in any way possible. It's a tremendous thing that we're doing. Also on September 12th, Be'ezrat Hashem, which is going to be a week and a half before Rosh Hashanah, we are going to be having a gathering, a evening of Hitorerut in honor of the upcoming Rosh Hashanah. So we're going to give you a little bit more details as the month unfolds now, August, Be'ezrat Hashem Av, so that everybody participates, and of course it's RSVP. We have to know how many ladies are joining. Those are the two basic announcements. We'll begin. There was a time when Jews traditionally wished each other an easy fast before the start of Tisha B'Av. And then the expression was replaced by a haunting expression that we should have a meaningful fast. Now, even though having an easy or meaningful fast are not necessarily contradictory, nevertheless, in order to have any fast that's meaningful, we first have to understand why it is that we're fasting. And in order to understand why we're fasting, we have to think a little bit. A good place to begin thinking is actually in a pasuk in Eicha, Megillat Eicha, which was composed by Yirmiyah HaNavi alav shalom as he watched the Bet HaMikdash and the society of his times fading away and crumbling. He watched as the Jewish people were taken away into exile by Nebuchadnezzar. Despite the fact that Yirmiyah suffered a terrible fate, and he saw the Jewish leaders, his beloved nation, and his cherished Bet Mikdash all destroyed, he tells the nation, Ma yit'onen adam chai, gever al chata'av, of what shall a living man complain? A strong man for his sins. Nachpesa derachenu v'nachkora, v'nashuva ad Hashem. Let us search and examine our ways and return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The question of Mait onen adam chai, of what shall a living man complain, is somewhat difficult to understand because people always complain. And after all, didn't Yirmiyah experience enough to complain about? Also, why does Yirmiyah ask about a living man? Dead men tell no tales. And they don't complain either. Why add the words Adam Chai, a living man? Ladies, it's possible that the second question we just asked now answers the first. And the second pasuk emphasizes the answer. The Khatam Sofer alav shalom once met a very old man and asked him the secret of his longevity. He said, I know that long life is a gift, arichut yamim, but tell me, what exemplary act did you do that merited you all these long years? And the old man smiled and he says, actually, I didn't do anything special. You see, I have a different theory about having a long life. I stuck to my theory and it worked for me. So the Khatam Sofer asked, so what's your theory? And the old man took a moment and he said, like me, all my friends went through their share of tzarot, nisyonot, and misfortunes. We all do. But they, however, are no longer here. But I'm here. So the Khatam Sofer asked, but why? That's exactly what I want to know. That's exactly my question. What's the secret of your arichut yamim? Of course we have our nisyonot, but yours didn't weaken you. You're still alive. You're in such good health. What's the difference between you and your friends who are no longer here. And the old man then said, you see, Kvod Harav, my friends always asked, why? Why me? Why me? But I never did. You see, every time tragedy struck, every time there was a challenge or a nisayon, my friends would ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did this happen? Why did I deserve this? Why me? They would plead and they would prod the Ribono Shel Olam for answers that no mortal mind can understand. And you know what happened? God said, you really want to understand? Come, I'm going to show you. And then He took them to a place where all the mysteries of life are revealed, to a place where the past and the future come together, and today's actions are the answers to history's mysteries. That's where He took them. I, on the other hand, wasn't so curious. And even if I was, I didn't turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask, why? I just accepted what happened with emunah. And you know what? Because of this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu never invited me upstairs to explain anything to me. Ladies, perhaps the essence of our mourning every year on Tisha B'Av can be summed up with Yirmiya's words, which analyze a human approach to immortal justice. Of what shall a living man complain? Gever al chata'av, a strong man for his sins. Nachpesa derachenu v'nachkora, let us search and examine our ways. V'nashuva ad Hashem, let's do tshuva and return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yirmiyah Navi is saying here, we may have questions, we all have questions, but such questions shouldn't require us to obsess about finding out the answers to those questions. Instead, the only answer we could attain is nachpesa derachenu, is by searching our own neshamot and introspecting. And when we do, we might come to realize that we're very far from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we should do tshuva and return to Him. Nachpesa derachenu v'nachkora v'nashuva ad Hashem. In truth, we weren't put on this earth to demand answers from the Ribono Shel Olam. We're here to improve ourselves and to ultimately improve the world. We're here to understand that there are times we have to turn to our own lives for the answer to our questions. Instead of turning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with questions and complaints, we should turn to ourselves. Nachpesa derachenu. We should search and examine our ways and see if the things that are happening in our life, if the challenges, if the nisyonot of life seem to be attacking us because there's something about our behavior that's bringing them on. And then we would understand, v'nashuva ad Hashem, we would correct our ways, do the proper tshuva, and return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On Tisha B'Av, which is coming up, Be'ezrat Hashem, very soon, we will hope that shouldn't be. It's a time where we sit low to the ground, like mourners. And we don't do this merely to wallow in sadness, but for the purpose of getting in touch with a certain raw truth that doesn't come easy to some of us. It's like a day where you have a doctor's appointment that you're dreading that day, and you wouldn't go to that appointment unless it was scheduled by the doctor himself, and you know it's extremely important. That's what it says in Megillat Echa. It says, He, Hashem, called a meeting time for me. Hashem calls us. We're all being called to that dreaded appointment by the Ribono Shel Olam. But interestingly, in sharp contrast to this idea, Chachamim tell us that Mashiach was born on that auspicious day, on Tisha B'Av. Hope seems to grow from the ashes of destruction, just as the Zohar Kadosh says. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai alav hashalom says that there's no light like the light that comes from the darkness. What a powerful metaphor this is, which each of us can apply to her own life. As strange as it seems, this sad day of the 9th of Av is accompanied by optimism. Tisha B'Av brings to life the Gemara that tells us that every moment and every movement downward is in order to elevate us upward. Yerida letzorech aliyah. Several years ago, Rabbi Mordechai Kamenetsky Shalita was asked to be a guest speaker at a Hanukkah party on one of the college campuses. And the party pretty much consisted of Rabbi Kamenetsky, followed by some jelly donuts. Not much. How thrilling is that? He got there, he looked around the room, and he realized that he's only going to have one chance at reaching and inspiring these young college students, these Jewish students. So he told them the story of the Beluzhever Rebbe, alav hashalom, lighting candles in the concentration camps that I told you already, I think, 2 years ago. I'll briefly remind you the story. The Rebbe, the Beluzhever Rebbe, looked around the bunker before reciting the bracha of Shechianu, and he was hesitating. And finally, with tears in his eyes, he made that final bracha of Shechianu, Vikimanu, Vigianu Lazman Hazeh, before lighting that improvised menorah that they managed to create by putting together some shoe polish and pieces of thread that they took out of their uniforms. And after the menorah lighting ceremony, when the Rebbe was asked by one of these broken souls there how he was able to thank God for bringing us to this terrible time and place, how could he say the bracha of Shechianu, V'kimanu, V'higianu Lazman Hazeh? You're thanking God for bringing us to this time period, for this? Look where we are. Look what devastation we're experiencing. How could you make this bracha? And the Rebbe answered, I too couldn't bring myself to recite this bracha until I saw how the people who, after being tortured and losing their families, were screaming out with their eyes that they wanted nothing else but to see the candles of the menorah burning. And they're standing there waiting for me to make this beracha. And that is proof of the indestructible spirit of the Jewish people. And therefore I had to recite that final beracha. And so Rabbi Kamenetsky told this story to those college students. But when he looked at the students, they were not interested at all. They looked at their program director as if they were trying to hint to him, okay, can we have the donuts now? But 3 months later, he received a call from one of those students. At that time, the Gulf War was just beginning. Scud missiles were pointed at Eretz Yisrael. And this young college student named Scott called Rabbi Kamenetsky, and he asked if he could speak with him privately because he didn't think anybody else would understand him. So the rabbi went to the college, found Scott's dorm room, and he gets there and he sees in the front room over there a number of huge lifelike pictures of all these like famous basketball players slamming the ball into the hoop. There was a 60-inch flat screen TV with they're all watching the basketball game over there, and there's a group of college guys drinking beer, cheering on the players on the screen. College dorm rooms, shtuyot. When the rabbi found Scott's room, he saw him lying under the bunk bed. Scott thanked the rabbi for coming, and he asked him to sit. And the rabbi's wondering, where am I going to sit? There's no way to sit here. So Scott told him, oh, you could sit on one of these bean bags on the floor. So Rabbi Kamenetsky sat on a bean bag, can you imagine? And he and Scott schmoozed for a little while. And then Scott wanted to ask his question. And the rabbi saw that it wasn't easy for him to express himself. He would start and then he would stop. He would start again and he would stop. He'd go, Rabbi, I can't stop thinking about, and then he would stop. Now, Rabbi Kamenetsky wanted to reassure him, so he said, listen, Scott, don't worry. You can't possibly shock me. I'm not here to judge you. You can tell me anything you want. And then Scott just let it out. Rabbi, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I just can't stop thinking about God. Scott looked for the rabbi's reaction. The Rav got up from the beanbag and reached out his hand to congratulate Scott, and he told him, Scott, you should know that you're one of the only normal people I know. I don't understand how someone can glide and surf through 70 years here on this planet and not be taken over with awe and wonder about God. How can anybody live on this earth and not think about Him? The rabbi, had a Sefer Tehillim which he brought, and he decided to give it to Scott, and he told him, open it up to any page. But before Scott opened up the Sefer Tehillim, the Rav said to him, look, Scott, these words here of the Psalms, these are the words of King David, the famous king of Israel. David Melech Israel Chai V'Kayam. Our sages tell us that the king is the heart of the nation. That means that as the leader, the king doesn't just impose his ideas, but rather he expresses what's buried in the hearts of the people. He educates them concerning their deepest desires and wishes. Open up this book, this Psalms, this Sefer Tehillim, to any page you want, and read. See if you could go one pasuk or even two psukim without God's name being mentioned over and over again. We, the Jewish people, are supposed to be a nation that's intoxicated with the idea of God. Cholat avani. We're lovesick over God. As you can imagine, after that meeting, Scott started to learn Torah. He gradually began to keep the mitzvot, and eventually he was married. He has children now. Baruch Hashem. He finished a few masechtot of the Talmud, of the Gemara. Over time, Scott learned quite well how to connect his thoughts to Kadosh Baruch Hu and to turn them into practical actions that have meaning and value in his life. Ladies, a light was found in the darkest corner of that college campus. This past week's parasha, Parashat Masei, began with the words, Ele mas'ei bnei Yisrael asher yatzu me'eretz Mitzrayim letzivotam beyad Moshe ve'Aharon. These are the journeys of Bnei Israel who went out of the land of Egypt according to their legions under the charge of Moshe and Aharon. Ladies, why are these journeys recorded? Who cares? You know why? Rashi HaKadosh Alav HaShalom explains that these journeys are recorded for us in order to inform us of the amazing and kind deeds of the Ribono Shel Olam. Now, how do we see the kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu through those journeys? Rashi HaKadosh continues to explain that even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu issued a decree that Bnei Israel should move around from place to place, and wander through the desert. All those journeys. Nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want anybody to say or to assume that Am Yisrael were just moving about and wandering from station to station, from place to place, for all those 40 years with no rest. Because there were only 42 stops along the way, right? Rashi HaKadosh says the following. He says, first of all, you should deduct 14 of the journeys because they all took place in the first year, even prior to the decree. So those you can't count. Then Rashi HaKadosh tells us, subtract another 8 stops, which took place after Aharon Cohen's death, which was in the 40th year of their journey. So that's the last year. And Bekitzur, the point is that Rashi says, if you do this math, you'll find that throughout the 40 years in the desert, they only pretty much made 20 journeys, which is not a lot for a 40-year span. But what's the implied kindness of traveling from place to place? Who needs even those 20? Why can't I just stay still for 40 years? Why does the Chumash tell us where Bnei Yisrael traveled from each time, from place to place? And why is the record of the travel almost always related to Yetziat Mitzrayim? I'll explain it to you with a story. There was a rabbi who more than 25 years ago, when he was still a young yeshiva bacher, he took a long trip from New York to Florida, where he and his friends, they set up shop learning Torah in North Miami Beach for a week. Now, after they did that, they had a long trip home, right? That they were driving home. So all the yeshiva boys arranged for 4 cars that all traveled simultaneously. And as they were driving, they would agree where they're going to make stops. And they agreed to meet in Savannah, Georgia, where they were all generously treated to a big Sunday brunch over there by one of the Chabad people there. At that meal, one of the senior students spoke up and he delivered an amazing Dvar Torah. And he spoke about the mystical concept that as they travel from one place to another, learning there, davening there, and doing acts of chesed in that place, they're like a magnet that attracts and elevates the hidden sparks of Kedusha that have been embedded in those dark and lowly places of existence in the world. You hear this? In other words, when you're traveling from one place to another, when you're going from one station in life to the next, and you find yourself in the most remote spot in the world that may seem very far from Yahadut, you have no idea of the impact that your deeds, that your learning, that your tefillot in that place are accomplishing as you engage in Torah while you're traveling. It's an amazing thing. But you should know that there are many sublime sparks that wait anxiously for some righteous individual or group of individuals to come along and release them from the imprisonment of the cases that they seem to be encased in. And this was the speech that this young yeshiva bacher gave to his friends at this brunch in Savannah, Georgia. The boys benched Birkat Hamazon and they got back on the road, and they decided they're going to set their eyes on the next meeting place where they would convene for Tfilat Arvit. All 4 cars in their caravan came together that evening within a few minutes of each other. And the boys found a big and empty parking lot. They stood underneath, there was like some kind of canopy or something there, and they davened there. At this point, they were in Virginia. On the far side of the parking lot, there was an open ice cream store. And there was a small cluster of people that were there. But the yeshiva boys kept to themselves. They davened, got back into their cars, and they headed for home, New York. They arrived early the next morning, and later that day, it was discovered that a phone call was made to the yeshiva's outreach division, and a message was left inquiring about Torah classes. And believe it or not, that call came from, of all places in the world, from that off the beaten path of Virginia where the Bachurim stopped to pray Tfilat Arvit. Can you imagine? To every place Bnei Israel traveled, they brought an ever-increasing treasure of holy sparks collected from the time they left Mitzrayim. What's the ultimate value of all those gathered sparks? Says the holy Ohev Yisrael Alav Shalom, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that portions of good and Kedusha are rescued from the hand of the oppressors, meaning the dark side, he feels the greatest possible delight. These sparks rise from the deepest pits, and they're elevated to form a crown for the Ribono Shel Olam. Could you imagine that, ladies? Makes you want to get up and travel all over the world, right? But the truth is, all this makes us wonder what positive days we can spend during our summer break. That when we travel, what are we doing during our travels? How are we spending our summer months? Just having fun, or are we creating good things, positive outcomes out there? What's the point of all of this? The point is that there's a reason to this journey in the Galut. There are things we're accomplishing as we proceed forward through this seemingly barren desert of life in the exile. And we have to see to it that we're accomplishing good things and acquiring all those holy sparks back to our side. Because the Gemara of Berachot states, woe to them, oy lahem, the children that have been exiled from the table of their father. Among the things that we refrain from on the 9th of Av is food and drink, obviously, intimacy, learning Torah, listening to music, a few more items. What are we meant to get out of this idea, this exercise of fasting and looking pitiful? Rav Yitzchak Blazer, alav shalom, was once invited by a group of young Talmidei Chachamim to deliver a lecture in their town. It was in the morning, so he went up to the platform, wrapped in his talit, and he said the following words to these young Talmidei Chachamim in this town. He said, a Jew once lost his way in the forest. The harder he tried to get out of that forest, the more it closed in on him. After wandering for 2 days, he almost gave up hope of finding his way out. Suddenly, he noticed another Jew coming towards him. Happily, he ran over to the other Jew and asked him to show him the way out of the forest. The second Jew asked him, how long have you been lost in this forest? So he said, me, 2 days. The other Jew said, wow, I've been lost here for a few weeks already, and I haven't yet found the way out. And you who've been lost for only 2 days, you're asking me how to get out of here? And then Rav Yitzchak Blazer raised his voice and cried to these young Talmidei Chachamim, and he said, Rabotai, you are young men who have been lost in life just for a short time because you're young. But I'm already old and I've been lost for years. I'm still looking for a way out of the forest of this tangled character of mine. And you're asking me to give you a Musar class to show you the way? And with that, he broke into loud sobbing, and the entire Keilah cried together with him. Was Rabbi Yitzchak more lost than they were? Was all that time that he spent in life trying to improve his character, was all that futile? Was this just a dramatic ploy to get the boys to think, the guys to think? Was he being overly modest? The answer is no. And I'll explain it to you with another story. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, a number of years ago, a rabbi rushed to get to the local mikvah in order to beat the mad rush. And when he arrived, he saw that there was only one other person there who was just entering the mikvah waters. And as this person was inching his way into the mikvah, into the water, he interestingly started to say the same words out loud again and again. What did he say? He would put his foot in again, he would say, "Oh, the fires of Gehenna." And then he would inch his way again and say, "Oh, the fires of Gehenna." The rabbi was a little scared. He is this. But he was determined to go into the mikvah. And when he put his foot into the water, he realized the first man was right. The waters were abnormally hot. But the rabbi continued to move forward into the mikvah until he was almost entirely immersed in the water. Lo and behold, there was the other man. Steam was rising all around. And the rabbi noticed that the man had a very serene smirk on his face. And then the rabbi turns to him and he says to him, "We all get used to Gehenna, don't we?" On the 9th of Av, we're like little children that are being sent away from the father's table. But the child sent to his room can very cleverly distract himself. His parents are waiting for him to break. They're waiting for him to come out of that room and to be willing to admit that he made a mistake, to say, "I'm sorry." But he's not coming out. Why? Well, he found some candy stashed away somewhere in a drawer. He has a cell phone there, a computer, a bunch of toys and other goodies that can keep him company. The kid forgot that he's being punished, bichlal. The father realizes that the child is too busily engaged in all those things. So what does he do? The father goes in there and he starts to forbid him to play with any of those toys and electronic gadgets. He takes it away, he says, "Not this, not this, not this, not that." And suddenly the child starts to feel alone and isolated from the family. Tears begin to come down his face. He cries out longingly for the father. He wants to come out of his room already and join society. And that's when the father invites him to his table again. And the child hopefully returns with a pleasant feeling of joy, but also of humility. On Tisha B'Av, we have to realize that we're lost. We're lost in this dark galut. We're in that room. And when we realize this, when we're going to realize that, instead of keeping ourselves busy with all these gadgets, we have to come to that realization that we're stuck in this room. When we realize that, we suddenly become candidates to be found by the Ribono Shel Olam. This is why even if it's just for a day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu removes from us all those things that give us some form of comfort or consolation in our present journey. And so even though we find ourselves deprived of Torah on Tisha B'Av, because we're not allowed to learn Torah, we're deprived of intimacy, we're deprived of food and music and nice clothing, that's supposed to give us the push to begin to wonder, wait, what are we missing on Tisha B'Av? And then we all come to the realization of what it is that we're really missing. And then we might just want to come out of our rooms and we may just want to experience the most elevated and truest joy, and that is to bask in the light and the glory of the Shekhinah HaKadosha and take part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's table and to partake of all the delights that He's preparing for us. But we have to merit. We have to want to come out of this room. As long as we think that all those gadgets and all those treasures in our room will keep us busy and not bored, we're going to remain closed within this dark and empty world of the Satan, and we'll never be able to know what it is to miss our Father's table. I want you to think about that. I want to wish you all a meaningful and thought-provoking fast. Think about the room that you're stuck in and the journeys you still have to travel on. That's full of accomplishments and the saving of lost neshamot. Think of all the light that's embedded in the darkness that can emerge with your good deeds. You're all invited to join the table of the King of Kings. Accept the invitation so you could experience the ultimate redemption bekarov mamash. Amen ken, yehi ratzon.